Hi, my name is Sheila. Welcome. If you've been following along with the Elizabeth Holmes letters, then I have something totally different. In the previous videos, I was covering her partner, Billy Evans. He had written a really long letter. I broke that up into about 6 videos. But in this one episode, we are going to talk about the letter that Cory Booker submitted. And here's the thing, typically, I like to read the letter and then talk about it at the end, or read what they wrote and talk about it at the end. I actually want to do something different this time because in this case, I've already kind of scanned the letter and I had some takeaways. And I want to know, if you're listening to me read this letter, if you're thinking some of the very same things. Now, I've already had one commenter say, "Hey, Sheila, the fact that he submitted a letter for her, I'm like done with him." I totally get it. But I actually feel like, and I'm going to go ahead and put these thoughts in your head. So I'm going to go ahead and contaminate you. So this is not, this does not make this like a legitimate sort of response that you're going to be giving, because I'm going to already tell you what to be looking out for. I feel like this is very lukewarm, that he is really playing it safe here. And we're going to talk about why, but let's go ahead and start reading it, because I think you will get my point as I'm going through this. I just think it's very obvious to me. You tell me if you feel the same way, or if you maybe feel a little something different. All right, so the first thing to notice here, and the Senate and the House, they have special rules, okay? They have all of these, not just like ethics rules, but they have policies. The first thing that I notice with this letter is that it is not on official letterhead. And when you see his name there, it just says Cory A. Booker, Washington, D.C. It does not say Senator Booker. It does not actually give the address. And it makes me wonder whether or not there are particular guidelines in place that sort of say, hey, you can or can't do this when you're a senator. So I'm wondering if that was one of the things that played into the fact that this is not on official letterhead. I have no idea. I don't know anything about that. But this was directed to the judge, and we'll slide down so that I can start reading this, if I can pull up the right section here. So we have, Dear Judge Davila. Whoops. I always, I got to work on getting me, I guess, a mouse for this so that I'm not scrolling all over the place, because this is just absolutely ridiculous every single time. So I'm just going to do it this way so that we can get to where it is we're trying to go. Throughout my 20 plus years in public service, from my time on the Newark City Council, as Newark mayor, and in the U.S. Senate, I've advocated for reforms to our criminal justice system. Now, think about that. He doesn't initially start out talking about her. He is starting out by talking about him and his positions on a certain topic of interest to not just his constituents, but to anyone who's living in this country, reforms around criminal justice. So immediately, I'm already thinking to myself, okay, so you're already trying to frame this because you understand that writing a letter of support for her is going to be an issue. And so instead of talking about her, let me talk about the criminal justice system. I mean, so you saw what he did there, right? Instead of talking about her, I'm going to talk about this over here, because this is likely more palatable to people than this. We're not missing this, Senator Booker. My advocacy has included speaking out for the rights of the accused, incarcerated, convicted, and condemned, as well as for improved conditions in our prisons, jails, and immigrant detention facilities. I've made it a point to visit prisons and jails, and I have worked hard to help those returning from incarceration re-enter society successfully. I have also worked to lower federal sentences for nonviolent offenses and to make sentencing more fair and proportionate. in addition to making our system focus more on restorative justice. So, um, I don't want to make light of this. Okay, so when you hear me sort of whatever that sound was I'm not making light of what he's talking about because these are very important issues to all of us. It is important that once someone is incarcerated, that there are opportunities out there for them when they come back. But again, remember what I said. This is supposed to be a letter about her going to the judge about her sentencing so that she doesn't spend so much time in jail. Like that's what she's hoping for. What she got was a letter from a politician who's trying to make it sound okay for him to write a letter of support for her. Because again, he sort of understands that the issues are a little complex unless I frame them a certain way. And we get it. Like I said, I'm not making light of it, but typically you start out talking about the person. You don't necessarily try to frame you. Like he's doing a lot of talking about himself. It's just very interesting. But let's hop back to him talking about himself. Maybe he will move forward with talking about her now. If I can just find where my stuff is. It is in this spirit. Okay, so see, he set the framework first. It is in this spirit that I write to advocate for a fair and just sentence for Elizabeth Holmes. Okay, so look at how he phrased that. Look at the words that he used. This is something that any one of us would want if we were looking at serving some time. We would want a fair and just sentence. And by framing it that way, he's not saying I want something special for her. He's talking about the system as a whole. So again, this has not really gotten to the point where it's personal yet, but we're going there. So now he says, I knew Ms. Holmes for about 6 years. Let me stop here. This I knew is like a past tense sort of thing. It's almost like I knew her, but I don't know her anymore. Maybe I'm just reading a lot into it, but typically you say, oh, yeah, I've known that person for a long time. I've known them since I've been in the sixth grade. The way he says it makes me feel like there's a point in time in which he stopped knowing her. I knew Ms. Holmes for about 6 years before charges were brought against her. Okay, so that frames it a little bit more. I should stop jumping ahead, right? We first met at a public policy conference hosted by the late Senator John McCain, bonding at a dinner when we discovered we were both vegan. There was nothing to eat, and we shared a small bag of almonds. Now we're getting the personal side here. In the years since, I've always been struck by the way our conversations focused on her desires to make a positive impact on the world. Like I said, we're now getting to this point where we're talking a little bit more about her as a person. To me, Ms. Holmes was always most interested in talking about world events and national and global challenges. She often passionately spoke of her interest in philanthropic causes, in meeting global challenges like climate change and world hunger, and about the grave crisis of limited access to affordable, quality health care for populations across the world and here in the United States. Her focus was always thoughtful, demonstrating a depth of knowledge about such issues, a curiosity to know more, and a determination to make a difference herself. So he's framing her as a person who's, interested in public policy, but saying, what is my place in the world? I believe from these conversations, she was not only sincere about her interests, but a person who would indeed dedicate herself to making positive contributions in the world beyond her company. Let's scroll down. From my faith, okay, so now we're going to go back to him. We're going to switch gears. Okay, so we talked about him, we talked about her, we're going back to him. From my faith, I believe in and try to hold myself to the difficult standard of unconditional love. Thus, although our communications have been more limited in recent years, I continue to consider Ms. Holmes a friend. I still believe that she holds on to the hope that she can make contributions to the lives of others, and that she can, despite mistakes, make the world a better place. So this is that part where I said, he was sort of framing this as a person that he used to know, but maybe sort of fell out of touch with. You guys know how it works. You go through life and you go through life stages, and sometimes you spend a lot of time with people for a few years, and then that sort of falls off. You pick up new close friends, and it sounds like this is what took place with him. So imagine you're him and you get the call from the partner or the parents that say, hey, Elizabeth says, that you guys used to really, have a professional friendship. People respect you. Would you be willing to write a letter on her behalf? And I can imagine he said something back that said, let me think about what it is I would write and think about how I can do that. Sometimes people will ask you difficult things to do that are not necessarily in your best interest. They might be in that other person's best interest. And so it does take you a moment to reflect, to determine whether or not what they're asking you to do is in alignment with your values. And it can be really hard because you want to support a friend, if it's truly a friend, someone that you've really built up that sort of relationship with. But if it's something that you're having some questions about and some concerns about, that could be an issue. So it says here, as author Brian Stevenson has said, each of us is more than the worst thing we've done. Let me tell you, if I was judged mostly on the wrong things I had done, let's just not go there. I firmly believe in the possibility of rehabilitation and in the power of redemption for anyone. And I believe that Ms. Holmes has within her a sincere desire to help others, to be of meaningful service, and possesses the capacity to redeem herself. Uh, and think about this, even though he's framed this around her now, for him, that's not something difficult for him to say, because of the way he started when he talked about how he thinks about criminal justice and reform and making sure that everything is just and fair. So, this is not some sort of big step. So everything he's saying, he has phrased in a way that fits with his values and the way he sees the world. He has not gone out on a limb here really hard for her. He hasn't like said, given up all these personal examples. He gave one personal example and talked about the conversations that he had with her. He talked about them in a very general kind of way. Okay. I pray for all those who may have suffered as a result of Ms. Holmes' actions, and I pray for her. I pray that in the coming years she is able to fulfill her desires and more humble hopes to be of meaningful service in our world. I believe she shares these prayers as well. Thank you for your commitment to the highest ideals within our justice system, and thank you for giving my letter your attention. And this again, so I think it's important to continue to recognize that there have been people who were harmed because of their actions and their decisions. It's very important for him to include this statement in here. Maybe should have gone at the beginning, but again, he really has framed this that has to do more with the justice system than it has to do with her. So I don't feel like this is a very personal letter. I don't feel like he really went out on a limb for her. I think this is a very lukewarm kind of letter. I think he played it safe. And let me talk about something else too. It's not like he doesn't have other concerns here. So let's frame what her company was. So you're talking about a biotech company, a startup, something in Silicon Valley. One of the things or issues that sort of chased him or continues to chase him, I think he's trying to frame it better, is his relationship to, quote, big pharma. And that's not my term. That's sort of what you hear. So let me pop on over here because I did sort of pull up I just sort of did a Google search just to see what would come up because I think it's important to keep in mind that that was probably in the back of his head too, that he has had to dodge that as an issue. And it's been like, hey, Senator Booker, you know, these pharmaceutical companies are charging people a whole lot of money, and these people need access to health care and medical services, and they can't get it if these companies are charging these exorbitant prices. And yet, these companies are supporting your campaign. Is it because they think that you're going to be lenient when it comes to legislation that might be passed? So I'm pulling up here. I just pulled this up just to see what would come up. And I actually searched under, just so that you'll know, Cory Booker ties to big pharma, because that's the way I have heard it presented. I actually had somebody ask me about that one time. And so you can see some of the things that sort of come up. Cory Booker looks to shake his reputation for drug industry. I mean, it even says it here, that reputation, this was 2019, deserved or not, could become a major political liability for Booker, particularly at a time of concern over drug prices. Ambitious proposal tackles drug affordability crisis. And here's the other thing, this is what I've heard him say, that, some of these pharmaceutical companies are located in his state. And he has a duty also to make sure that the employees of those companies are part of the calculus when he's determining, how to balance that. So he's trying to balance the interests of people as a whole in our healthcare system, and pharmaceutical companies that do a whole bunch of research and development and put money into trying to find new products. And what is the balance between regulating what they're trying to charge us and making sure that people still have access? So, like I said, this is obviously something that's been running behind him as he continues to run, sort of thing. Cory Booker and drug maker campaign cash by the numbers claim has accepted over 400,000 from the pharmaceutical industry during his political career. I don't know, if that's a lot. If you're talking about his whole career, from city council to U.S. senator, everything you need to know about where he gets his money. Booker tries to shake doubts about pharmaceutical ties. Record on big pharma hangs over. So there is, there have been questions about his ties to the pharmaceutical industry. And so while um, Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos was not technically, a pharmaceutical company, they were in the business of providing medical services. And those services, to some extent, were going to be set up in some of these box pharmacies. So you can see how people had a lot of concern about him. And now you see this letter, and he's probably going, okay, how do I write this letter given all of the complicated issues that are attached to it? But that's pretty much it. Let me know where you fall on that. Do you think he did the right thing? Do you think it was a lukewarm kind of letter? That it was just sort of, it was sort of like a criminal justice reform letter, be fair, be just to people. We're concerned about when they get out, making sure that they have opportunities, making sure that they pay their debt. We care about what happened to the people who were hurt. And this is my letter and what I'm saying, please consider it. I did feel like it was a little lukewarm, to be expected. That's it. If you got some information out of this, learned a little bit more about this whole situation, because she does have her appeal that's going to be going on. So go ahead and give the video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe, and peace.